Hello and welcome to another Magic 2015 gameplay. Today we are taking another look at our Abzan or Junk Reanimator deck, which is still pretty much the same as the original version, so if you haven't seen that video I'll put a link on the screen. And the idea behind the deck is still the same, and that's to abuse cards like Rescue from the Underworld that can get big creatures from the graveyard back into play, and also trigger enter the battlefield abilities again. And we also have spider spawning, which puts more spiders into play the more creatures are in the graveyard, and you also get to flash it back from the graveyard. So these are two very powerful spells. And how do we put all those cards in the graveyard? Well, we have Satyr Wayfinder that also fixes our mana, and we have Necromancer's Assistant that also puts cards into our graveyard. Now the Assistant and the Wayfinder aren't very good creatures, but we don't really mind trading them away early, as our late game is pretty formidable. So let's take a look at our other cards. We have Seance, which is our third and final non-creature spell in the deck, because we want to maximize our creature count. And Seance is pretty much our third abusive reanimation spell, you could say. And it doesn't actually put the creature back permanently, but what it does is trigger all those enter the battlefield abilities again. So cards like Wayfinder, Assistant, and a few more we'll see later all trigger again when they enter the battlefield. And those benefits do add up quickly, as the cards you get back do get exiled, which is not really what you want, because you want as many creatures in the graveyard as possible. But since you are getting back cards like the Wayfinder and the Assistant, they help you to fuel the graveyard with more creatures that can help you win the game. So Seance is a very powerful card and is pretty much the reason we're also playing white in this deck. The other reason is Baneslayer Angel, which is just a very powerful creature that you can cast or reanimate, whatever works. So the Assistant we've covered. I'm also running one Phyrexian Rager, just a creature that has an ETB effect that draws a card. The life loss doesn't really matter in this deck. Then we have Shadowborn Demon, which is our only real removal spell in the deck, but it's quite a powerful one, as you get to destroy a creature and then you still have a 5/6 left, and usually you will have 6 or more creatures in the graveyard, so you don't have to sacrifice anything. But even if you do, then you have a sacrifice outlet which can sometimes be helpful if you have a Seance in play, for example. Then Rescue from the Underworld we've covered. Take note that it's an instant, so you can do this on your opponent's turn. For example, you can block with the creature and then exile it with Rescue, so it doesn't die and you don't take any damage. Rune-scarred Demon is an excellent reanimation target, as it can find any card in your deck. So if you're missing a combo piece, or if you just want to find an answer for a specific problem, then Rune-scarred Demon is your man. And you can also just find another Rune-scarred Demon if you don't have anything specific to look for, so you can postpone your decision. Then Gristlebrand is an awesome card in this deck. He's quite castable, as we do have a few black sources, so you can even cast him on turn 8 if you're lucky. But reanimating this guy is pretty powerful, as the flying lifelink means he'll close out games very quickly, and you even get to draw a ton of cards with him, and there's a lot of ways to gain life in this deck. So once Gristlebrand hits play, it's pretty difficult to lose the game from there. Then Elvish Visionary is also a very good early play that draws a card, so you can use it to chum block and then try and get it back with a Seance, for example, to draw another card, or you can use it as a target for Rescue from the Underworld to draw another card and reanimate something. So also very important and powerful. Then Wayfinder is one of the most important cards in the deck, and you want to see this in your opening hand or together with the Assistant. Then Reclamation Sage is our answer to artifacts or enchantments, and thanks to cards like Seance and Rescue from the Underworld, you get a couple of uses out of her. Then we have Paragon of Eternal Wilds, which has a couple of applications in this deck. The most straightforward one is giving creatures, green creatures +1/+1, so it works very well with spider spawning. The reason we're using this instead of the more classic artifact Anthem effects is that it's a creature, so we can search it up from the graveyard, for example, and increase our creature count in the graveyard. And the other reason is the ability to grant trample to a creature, which works very well with cards like Nemesis of Mortals that can become very big but don't have trample themselves. But we'll get back to the Nemesis in a bit. Then Ceruli Gatekeepers is another way to gain some life against the more aggressive decks, and gaining 7 life every time you trigger this is pretty powerful, as you usually get a couple of uses out of it. Then Spider Spawning is one of the more powerful cards in this deck, as the deck is pretty much built around it to have as many creatures in the deck as possible. Nemesis of Mortals is another reason to have as many creatures in the graveyard as possible, as you can often just cast this for double green, and a 5/5 for double green that can easily become a 10/10 is also very powerful. And then being able to give it trample with the Paragon is also a nice addition. And then finally we have Pelaka Worm, which gains life with its Enter the Battlefield trigger and draws a card when he dies, and it's also just a giant creature with trample, so can close out games quickly. Then the mana base, we're running 12 gates to support the Gatekeeper and to fix our mana, and we have 4 plains, 6 forests and 3 swamps. As you can see, we have mostly green cards, so we want to make sure to hit those Wayfinders and Visionaries early. So that's the deck. Now let's jump into a game. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which seems fine. It's not exciting. We have an early assistant, and then hopefully this Baneslayer Angel survives, but I don't think we mulligan this. If we're lucky with the Necromancer, we can get a lot of value from this spider spawning, and Satyr Wayfinder does make our draw a lot better. So I think we'll lead with the Orzhov Guildgate, so next turn if we play a forest, we have access to all colors. So turn 2 Wayfinder into turn 3 Assistant does put a lot of stuff in the graveyard. Our opponent's playing red-green, but hasn't played anything early, so that's good. Let's see what we get with the Wayfinder. And we did hit on lands. Rescue from the Underworld is a little unfortunate, as it's one of our few non-creature spells that's not good in the graveyard. I think I'll go with the plains here for Baneslayer Angel, but at least we did get a spider spawning, which we can flash back later. So hoping that the assistant puts some more creatures in the graveyard, and otherwise we'll have to find a way to get the Wayfinder in the graveyard. Alright, another Guildgate, but let's play the plains and the assistant. We also have the Sage as backup in case our opponent plays some artifact or enchantment we don't like. And here we found a Desecration Demon and another rescue, so we're not really hitting with our graveyard creatures here, but at least we have one creature now. Opponent stuck on 2 lands as well. Alright, he did find a third one, so we should have a match at least. Banefire for 1, I'm guessing on the assistant. Alright. We don't really mind more creatures hitting the graveyard. And here we can just play, let's see, Selesnya Guildgate and the Rager. Perhaps should have played the Rager first just to see what we draw. But yeah, another Selesnya Guildgate. So let's just attack with the Wayfinder, and then next turn we can go Forest and play Baneslayer Angel. If our opponent finds an answer, then we still have Spider spawning in hand and in the graveyard. But right now it's not too powerful. Alright, opponent finds a Cultivate. Let's find out how many colors our opponent's playing. Seems like just 3, or perhaps 2 with the Light Splash. I think we're still gonna play the Angel here, even though we did find a Wayfinder. Let's attack. And let's hope our opponent doesn't have removal for the Angel, or at least doesn't find a way to exile all these creatures like with an Anger of the Gods, because that means they don't hit the graveyard and our spider spawning is even worse. More forests and an Elvish Visionary, which doesn't stop our Baneslayer Angel. And we'll gladly trade the Visionary with our Wayfinder, since we still have a second one and we don't have a rescue in hand. Let's start by playing another Wayfinder, I think, as I am not likely to play a spider spawning this turn. And here we did hit a couple of creatures, so now our spider spawning's a lot better. Not gonna play the Reclamation Stage into an empty board, since it does die to an Anger of the Gods, and we already have enough pressure as is. And I don't even know if we play a spider spawning next turn if our opponent doesn't sweep the board now. Arbor Colossus does stop our Baneslayer Angel actually, and Prey Upon kills the Baneslayer Angel. So opponent did find an answer. So I think now it's fine to play the spider spawning. And we can also... yeah, no, we can't play the Visionary unless we draw an untapped land, which seems a little risky. So let's just play the spider spawning, and next turn we can flash back one of them. And I'll just pass a turn here, after playing another land. We could have suicided in some of our creatures, but I don't think the spider tokens are that much better than these creatures. And opponent finds a Placoworm, which does a pretty good job of attacking into our board with Trample. And there's our Paragon of Eternal Wilds, which is actually pretty nice with all these spider tokens in play. The question is, do we flash back a spider spawning before playing the Eternal Wilds and attacking with everyone? And I think we do, just because now, even if we play the Paragon, the damage isn't enough to kill the opponent right away. And if he then finds an answer for the Paragon, I'm not sure the remaining creatures are enough to close out the game. While if we flash back the spider spawning, wait a turn, hope our opponent doesn't sweep the board, and then play the Paragon, then I'm pretty sure we can attack for lethal. So I think that's what we're gonna do here. Not sure why that happened. And we still have a second spider spawning in the graveyard, should we need to put some more creatures on the board. But I think here we can wait a turn and don't attack, as we would lose 3 creatures. Actually, I think this attack is still fine, as if our opponent does have a sweeper, then we haven't dealt any damage at all, while now at least we get to deal 7 damage, it seems. But yeah, we should have attacked first before flashing back the spider spawning here, as we would have gotten an extra creature in play. opponent says he has 4 cards to save him. I'm guessing 2 of them are Anger of the Gods, and the other ones are perhaps more Pelakka Worms. But I don't think a Pelakka Worm is gonna really save our opponent if we manage to stick a Paragon. Galvanic Juggernaut is interesting. And another Arbor Colossus is totally fine. We're trying to swarm the board here. Opponent has 5 blockers. And our Paragon should be pretty good here. We can also play a Reclamation Sage to kill the Juggernaut. And attack with everyone. And that should be enough. Alright, let's take a look at our opener, which has 0 lands. So let's try another one. Oof. So if we draw a land, this hand is pretty awesome. If we don't draw a land, this hand is pretty terrible. So let's mulligan. Alright, this is pretty much the same, only that it's better if we draw a green source. Given that we're on the draw, I want to give this a try. It will probably backfire horribly, but sometimes in life you've gotta live on the edge, and sometimes that results in me playing 1 land and watching as our opponent plays a Loyal Pegasus that's single-handedly gonna kill us, even though it doesn't have a buddy to kill us with, and there's a land. Alright, let's play the Wayfinder to find more lands. There we go. Think we need white, so let's grab a Plains. 1 creature in the yard already, so spider spawning does something. And let's say go. So this seems to be an aggro deck if it has a Loyal Pegasus, but usually those decks don't have this much blue in them. Perhaps he's got a Pestermite that he's gonna play. Yep, there it is. And unfortunately that is gonna... Alright, he goes for the Swamp, but little does he know that we have an Elvish Visionary in hand. But let's attack first, since this guy is not gonna do much blocking. So it looks like we're gonna take 4 damage a turn here, which is a lot, not gonna lie. But our spiders have reach, so that's good. Next turn we can play an Assistant or a Wayfinder if we want to make sure to hit our 5th land. So if we hit a land next turn, I'll play the Assistant. If we don't, I'll probably play the Wayfinder, just so we can get spider spawning online as quickly as possible. Guard Gomozoa is gonna hold our 1-drops back, our 1/1s back. Alright, I think this is an easy Wayfinder, because if we find a forest, we can also play the Visionary. We found a Guildgate instead, but 3 creatures for spider spawning, so we can play the Guildgate and next turn cast a spider spawning. No good attacks here. So hopefully our opponent doesn't keep up a counter spell next turn. 5 mana, could be Baneslayer Angel. Alright, we'll take 4 down to 12. And their opponent left all his mana neatly untapped, which is very suspicious. So I think we'll take 1 more turn of beating and play an assistant, milling a visionary and seance, and now we can play another visionary here. And draw a Nemesis of Mortals. Alright. And again, no great attacks here. So let's pass the turn. We could have maybe attacked with our guys just to get something in the graveyard for spider spawning. I guess that would make sense. So let's take 4 more here. And then hopefully resolve a spider spawning. But looks like our opponent is holding on to his counter spell over there. I think we'll attack with everyone here. Try to get someone in the graveyard. So if we do resolve spider spawning, at least it's more powerful. Could also go for a Nemesis of Mortals, followed by a Necromancer's Assistant. I guess that's also good. Does mean again 1 more turn of taking 4, but I'm almost certain that our opponent has a counterspell. Alright, revealed more creatures and, very important, a spider spawning in the graveyard. But sadly we do need 2 more lands in order to flash it back. Opponent did not counter our Nemesis of Mortals. So, maybe our opponent doesn't have a counterspell and has just a lot of lands in his hand. I guess we'll find out. As we take 4 down to 4. And then try to resolve. Alright, our opponent played a Baneslayer Angel, which weirdly enough is good for us. There's a Guild Gate. And yeah. I guess attacking now doesn't make a ton of sense since we would lose the Nemesis. So hopefully he doesn't have a negate. He does not. And we get a lot of spiders now to slowly get back into this game. So things are looking up. If we find 1 more land, we can flash back to spider spawnings, which will make it impossible for our opponent to attack. So not too shabby. And our opponent doesn't even bother to attack, which is great news. And let's see here. I don't think we can really afford to attack either with this Baneslayer Angel in play. So why not play our own Baneslayer Angel? I think that's fine. Our other option is playing the Assistant and monstrosing the Nemesis. I'm not opposed to the idea, but if our opponent does have a counter, I don't mind him countering the Baneslayer. Yep, there it is. Then next turn we can maybe resolve a Plaka Worm, which is actually better almost than a Baneslayer Angel, since it can attack past the Guard Gomozoa thanks to Trample. So yeah, I think we played nicely around our opponent's Dissolve. And now we still have a shot at winning. Our opponent does seem to be flooding out a little bit. Does not attack. That's great news. And there's another spider spawning. So we can't quite go Assistant plus spider spawning, but we can flash 1 back. So I think I'll go for the Plaka Worm though, because we are pretty low. Should our opponent have the card that makes something unblockable, then we could be in trouble. Although it would be a weird inclusion in a Flyers deck. But you never know. Does he have a second counterspell? He does. Alright. I guess that was to be expected. Still no great attacks here, so let's say go. So our game plan now is just to cast infinite spider spawnings. We have 1 in hand, so we can cast that twice, and then 2 in the graveyard, and that should be enough to just attack for lethal. And Gristlebrand certainly doesn't hurt. So yeah, let's just flash one back. So we have 16 spiders. So I think next turn we can perhaps even try to make an attack. Our opponent is basically at 20 if you consider the lifelink on the angel. So 20 life and 4 blockers. And we have 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 22 creatures. We can't quite kill the opponent, but we're getting very close. So I think one more spider spawning should do it. So yeah, let's cast it, I guess. What happens if we go for an all-out attack? Our opponent probably blocks the Nemesis with the Gargomazoa. So I think actually attacking here is fine since our opponent's tapped out. So he can't counter the flashback on the spider spawning. And this is gonna do a lot of damage. The Loyal Pegasus can block, because it's not blocking alone. And the opponent is blocking the spider. Yeah, I should probably block the assistant as well. Alright, so opponent's at 20 and goes pretty low, down to 2, and left himself with a victory if it weren't for our flashbacked spider spawning. So let's say go and hope our opponent doesn't top deck some miracle card. Alright, he left, so probably means we won. Our opponent did flood out a bit, as he only drew 6 spells this game, so that's unfortunate. But at least I got to show you a nice comeback. And I can also show you the Paragon of Eternal Wilds doing a pretty good job of pumping all our spider tokens. And we'd also been able to give our Nemesis trample next turn, but that's not gonna be necessary. Alright, so I wanna thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this gameplay, and as always, have a nice day.